Hey, so it's been a long time since I've made a video, but I've been messing around with this new Chat GPT, which is amazing. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here for people who love to self-teach and topics. And there's a couple of different examples of how you could use this to do that. One would be you can use this to design a curriculum for homeschooling, but I'm going to show how I might come up with a curriculum to self-teach a topic from a university course. So first of all, I'm going to pick a random course by letting GPT pick for me. So I'm just going to say, give me three three majors you might take at a university. And I'll pick one. So there's biology. I know a bit about that. Computer science I'm too familiar with. I'm not going to pick that one. And psychology I don't know a lot about. So let me maybe go with psychology. And let me say, uh, give me a random course a student, a psychology major would take at university. Okay, so let's go with developmental psychology. So here I could write down, I've got a Google Doc open, but it could be any kind of Word document. And so we'll say developmental psychology. So let's see, what curriculum is typically covered in a developmental psychology course? So it gives me the main topics that are covered: physical development, such as prenatal development, physical growth and maturation, and sensory and motor development, cognitive development, social and emotional development, theoretical perspectives on development, and so on. So I would probably go ahead and write all of these out. I won't. Oops. Why is it doing that? Okay, so I would do that and bold it. And so like one, physical development, cognitive development, social and emotional development, and so on. So I'll stop there. And then another thing I would look at are like textbooks, for example. So what are popular textbooks used to teach developmental psychology at university? So then you could write these out, and these would give you some resources to look at. So developmental psychology by Laura E. Burke, etc. So that gives you some books that you could go and either buy or at least just go look at the reviews and see if the content is related to what you're wanting to learn. So now let's go back up here and pick one of these. So social and emotional development. So what content, or let's see, what topics and let me do that. Social and emotional development are covered in a developmental psychology course. So this gives you topics. And the reason I think this is really useful is a lot of times when you're a student trying to learn these topics, you don't know what you don't know. And especially like in this case, I don't know anything about psychology. So I wouldn't have had any idea that attachment is something you learn about. But attachment is the emotional bond that forms between an infant and a primary caregiver. Um, so you can ask all sorts of things. So here we've got, this is social and emotional development, attachment. So let's ask like, what resources are used to learn about attachment in a developmental psychology course? So of course there's textbooks. Sometimes these get pretty interesting. So journal articles, and in particular PsycInfo and PubMed. So I'll go ahead and list that here, but that's probably just general PsycInfo and PubMed articles. Okay, lectures, online resources. They don't list any specific online resources. You could go on to ask probably what are some specific online resources that would talk about this, or like some online blogs that cover attachment and so on, and find all sorts of resources that you wouldn't have known about. But let me ask this, like what sort of questions do professors or professors ask about attachment in a developmental psychology course in university? And I spelled this wrong because there's no T here, attachment. So this will give you a maybe more specific idea. So what is attachment and why is it important for development? What are the different types of attachment styles and how are they characterized? How do attachment styles develop and what factors can influence their development? How does attachment relate to development, such as cognitive and social development? So here you could go on and ask GPT even these questions, or you could just go online and learn about attachment theory and come back and test yourself to see if you can answer these questions. I've tested, and you can even ask for multiple choice questions. If you want to give yourself a quiz, you can say generate 3 multiple choice questions about attachment. Let's maybe ask one of these. So how do attachment styles develop? And what factors can influence their development? So attachment styles refer to the patterns of emotional bonding that develop between an infant and a primary caregiver. The parenting styles, genetic factors, temperament, early experiences, environmental stressors. So you can see you can go down a rabbit hole in like any one of these topics. And I've stopped taking notes, but you know, so if I get into attachment, I might start seeing parenting style, genetic factors, and I could have written down all the questions. In fact, I might break these up into bigger sections. So genetic factors, temperament, and so on. So you could list out all this stuff, and then like what is a project that a student might do to learn about how temperament affects attachment in a developmental psychology course. There are many types of projects that students might do. Here are a few examples: a literary review or literature review. So searching for relevant articles and synthesizing your findings. An observational study, survey studies. So you get the idea even in the classes of what sort of studies they do. So I've never taken a psychology class like this, but now then I have an idea of different types of projects that one might do. So let's see, an observational study. So can you give me an example of an observational study that might be assigned to a student in an environmental psychology course? Or sorry, environmental developmental. So here's an example. Examine the relationship between infant temperament and attachment style. Objective, explore the relationship between infant temperament and attachment style. Method, identify a group of infants between the ages of 6 and 18 months, along with their primary caregivers, administer a temperament assessment. So you could even ask, how would I administer a temperament assessment, and go on and on down rabbit holes. So I just think this thing is really amazing that you could like pretty much figure out how to self-teach yourself, or what would go into learning a particular field of study. So I've run out of tokens before, so I'm trying not to run out of tokens by asking too many questions. But I'll try to switch topics here and say like what curriculum is generally expected for a 6th grader to learn. So now then, say you want to teach your children, you can get a pretty broad overview of what a curriculum in the United States is for 6th graders. So mathematics would be like whole numbers, decimals, fractions, ratios, algebraic concepts for reading and language arts, science, social studies, physical education, music, art. They might have extracurriculars such as clubs, sports teams, and so on. So we could break it down to like what is taught in life sciences. So what does that mean? Life sciences in 6th grade in the United States. So 6th graders will typically learn about the following topics: characteristics of living things, cells and cell structure, genetics and heredity, evolution and natural selection, the diversity of life, the interdependence of living things, so if I'm wanting to teach my own 6th grader, now I know that these are topics that are taught in 6th grade, but we can, break it down. So what would I teach a 6th grader about cells and cell structure? So you might teach that cells are the smallest unit of life, and they're the basic unit of all life, and all things are made up of cells. Cells have a variety of structures. You can teach about, cell membranes and cytoplasm and organelles, and so on. So, the nucleus, mitochondria produce energy, ribosomes. Just a few examples of the concepts you might teach the 6th grader about cells and cell structure, but try to, present the material in a way that's age appropriate and engaging. You can even ask, like, how would I make it engaging? Like what? So, like, give me 3 multiple choice questions about mitochondria that I could ask my 6th grade student. So what is the main function of mitochondria in a cell? You've got A, B, C, D. Which of the following is not a characteristic of mitochondria? Now, of course, it might make a mistake, so it would be good to double check and make sure that it's going to give you correct answers. Oh, it's interesting. They didn't give me the answers this time. So usually they give me the answers as a response. You might have to look into it yourself, which is probably a good idea if you're teaching this stuff anyway. But yeah, anyway, so you can generate a quiz for your student, and then like, what is a project that I can give my 6th grade student to help them learn about the structure of cells. Here's a few ideas. Create a model of a cell. You might have them create a model of a cell using materials such as clay or paper mache, or even a computer program or an app, and they could research the functions of organelles. They could create a cell diagram, labeling different organelles and explaining their functions. They could create a rap song. They could create a game, such as a board game or a card game, that helps tell about the structure and functions of cells, and so on. So, yeah, you can get all sorts of curriculum ideas. Are there any good articles that a sixth grader could read about the structure of cells? The structure and function of cells from Science Buddies. This article provides a general overview of the structure and the function of cells, cell membranes, Cells, the building blocks of life from Kids' Health. Cells, the basic units of life from the National Institute of General Medical Sciences. This article is a more in-depth overview, and so on. So, you can see that you could go down a rabbit hole and generate all sorts of curriculum for students if you're going to homeschool, or for yourself if you want to self-teach a particular topic. You can learn about the resources that people generally use to learn about such topics, the topics that are covered, even if you had no idea what was covered. So like if you want to learn about robotics, you can ask what is typically covered in robotics. You can ask, can you break down these topics for me at a college level or at a graduate level? And you can ask, what sort of questions should I be able to answer about such topics to know that I understand it, and so on and so on. So I don't know, I just think this is amazing. There's going to be so many other uses for Chat GPT, but yeah, this one is one I'm certainly interested in.